Imagine trusting someone your whole life, only to have them betray you in the worst way. What happens when a father steals his daughter's future? This is the untold story of revenge, survival, and freedom. I've always believed in standing on my own 2 feet. Since I was young, my dad, Greg Carter, used to say, "You can do anything if you set your mind to it." And for the most part, I took those words to heart. I spent my high school years juggling part-time jobs, academic scholarships, and saving every penny I could to build my college fund. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was my ticket to independence and hopefully a better future. I'm 25 now, living in London, in a tiny but cozy apartment I've made my own. When I look around, I see a reflection of everything I've worked for. The degree, the job, the life I've carefully built. Nothing came easy, but I was proud of it. Proud of the fact that I didn't need anyone to support me. Not anymore. But then one phone call changed everything. "Emily," my dad's voice crackled through the receiver, flat and emotionless, "you don't need to worry about your college fund anymore." I took it out. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. "What? What do you mean you took it out?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to keep it steady. "There's no need to worry. I had some debts I needed to clear up," he said, as if this was all just a minor inconvenience. "You're smart. You'll figure it out. Don't stress about it." I could barely breathe. The fund, the $42,000 I had saved over the past few years, the money that was supposed to carry me through my final year of college, was gone. Vanished. And not because of some mistake, but because of a decision my father made. My father, the person I had always looked up to, the one who I thought would always have my back, had taken my future from me. "How much is left?" I asked, barely managing to squeeze the words out. "Nothing," he said matter-of-factly. "I used it to pay off some debts. But you don't need to worry about that, honey. You'll figure it out. You always do." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout, to cry, to tell him how wrong he was. But instead I stood there frozen. How had I gotten to this point? How had my own father, who for years had been my rock, turned into the one who betrayed me? I couldn't focus. My mind raced through every memory of the past few years. Every sacrifice I had made to get here. Every late night, every job, every penny saved. And now it was all gone. All of it stolen by the one person I trusted most. "I'm going to need that money back," I said, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. I didn't know what else to say. What else could I say? My whole world felt like it was crashing down around me. "Don't worry about it, Emily. You'll be fine. You're a smart girl. I've got to go, meeting some friends for drinks," he said dismissively, as if he hadn't just taken everything from me. I could barely process what was happening. My father, the man who had always told me to work hard, to make something of myself, had stolen from me. And worse, he didn't seem to care. I sat down at my small desk by the window, staring blankly at the London street below, trying to make sense of everything. But there was no making sense of it. I had just lost the one thing that mattered most to me. Then, just as I was about to hang up, another message popped up on my phone. It was from him again. "Don't mention this to your mom or your grandmother," the message read. No need to worry them. Of course, he didn't want anyone else to know. He didn't want to face the consequences of his actions. It wasn't the first time he had done something like this. I'd always known my dad had a problem with money. He had gambled, made bad investments, and borrowed money from people who never saw it again. But I never thought he would take that risk with me. My college fund was the one thing I thought I could rely on, the one thing that no one could take away. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit here and let this happen. I had to find a way to get my money back, to get my future back. But how? I started by digging through the bank statements, trying to piece together what had happened. The more I read, the angrier I got. He had withdrawn money in small chunks over the past month, just enough to go unnoticed. He had taken everything without a second thought. All my hard work, all the years of sacrifice, gone in an instant. I couldn't do this alone. I called my roommate, Emma. She was as stunned as I was when I told her. "Your dad did what?" she exclaimed. "Can't you report him for theft?" But I couldn't. The account had been in both of our names. Legally, he had every right to access it. But emotionally, this was a betrayal that cut deeper than anything I had ever felt. And then came the next text from him. "Don't stress. You worry too much. Maybe this is a sign you should take a break from school. I know some guys who can get you a modeling gig. Better money than that degree anyway. I stared at the words on the screen, my stomach turning. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about how little my dad valued me, how little he cared about my future. To him, I was just another resource to exploit, another thing he could use to bail himself out of his messes. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't just accept this as my fate. I had worked too hard, and I wasn't about to let my father take that away from me. The next few days felt like a blur. I couldn't concentrate on anything. The looming shadow of my father's betrayal hung over me like a dark cloud, and I couldn't escape it. Graduation was just around the corner, but all I could think about was the gaping hole where my future had once been. I had worked so hard, sacrificed so much to get here, and now, thanks to my father, I was left with nothing. I sat in my small apartment, surrounded by the mess of bank statements and notes I had been trying to make sense of. My hands were still shaking as I flipped through the pages, searching for answers, but I found none. It wasn't just the money. It was the trust that had been shattered, the relationship that had been poisoned. How could he have done this to me? To his own daughter? Then, as if to add insult to injury, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from him. "Don't mention this to your mom or your grandmother," the message read. "They don't need to worry. I'll handle it." I stared at the words, my fingers tightening around the phone. He was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to manipulate the situation to make it seem like I was the one who should be grateful. My stomach churned with a mix of anger and disbelief. How dare he think that I would protect him? How dare he think I would allow him to get away with this? Just as I was about to throw my phone down in frustration, another message popped up, this time from an unknown number. "Hello, Emily," the message began. "My name is John Mitchell. I'm an old friend of your father's. I need to speak with you. There's something you need to know about your dad's financial situation." I hesitated. My mind raced with possibilities. Who was this person? And why was he reaching out to me now? I had no idea what kind of game my father was playing, but I wasn't sure I was ready to hear more. Still, something about the message felt urgent, like a piece of the puzzle I couldn't ignore. I called the number back, my heart racing. The voice that answered was gruff, but there was an edge to it. Something that told me this wasn't just some random contact. "I'm not sure what this is about," I said, my voice shaking, "but I really don't have time for any more of my dad's mess." "I know this is going to be hard for you to hear," the man said, his tone softening, "but I know your father's secrets. And if you don't act fast, things are going to get much worse for him, and for you." I sat back, confused, my mind racing. "What are you talking about?" "He's in deeper than you think, Emily," John continued, his voice low. "He's been gambling, borrowing money, making deals he can't keep. And it's all coming to a head now. If he doesn't pay back what he owes, he's going to lose everything, including the house." I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. Was this really happening? My dad, the man who always promised me that everything would be fine, had been hiding this from me for years? And now it was all crashing down. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. "I want to help you, Emily," he said, his voice firm. "Your dad's not going to be honest with you, but I can tell you what he won't. He's going to try and keep this from you, but you need to know the truth. He's one bad deal away from losing everything. If you don't act quickly, you won't have anything left to save." I was quiet for a long moment, letting his words sink in. I had no idea what to do with this information. But one thing was clear. I couldn't trust my father anymore. Everything he had told me, everything he had promised, had been lies. "I need to meet with you," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I need to know everything." "Good," he replied, a sense of urgency in his tone. "I'll tell you everything. But we need to do this face to face. Meet me tomorrow at the cafe on King Street. We'll talk more then." I hung up the phone, my mind spinning. I had no idea who this man really was, but something told me I didn't have a choice. If I wanted answers, if I wanted to figure out how deep my father's mess went, I had to meet him. The next day I stood outside the cafe, staring at the door. My palms were clammy, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know if I was ready for the truth, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let my dad's lies destroy me. I was going to take back control no matter what it took. The cafe on King Street was small, quiet, and smelled like freshly brewed coffee. I stood there for a moment, staring at the door, my mind spinning with the possibilities. John Mitchell had been right about one thing. My dad's situation was worse than I could ever have imagined. I needed to know the full extent of it, but a part of me was terrified of what I might find. I pushed the door open, and a bell rang softly above me. I scanned the room, finally spotting the man sitting in the corner, his face obscured by a newspaper. I could tell right away that he was the one. There was something about him that seemed too out of place to be anyone else. I walked over, my heart pounding. "Emily," he said without looking up. "You came. Good. Sit down." I took the seat across from him, my mind racing. He folded the newspaper and looked at me with a serious expression. His eyes were sharp, but there was a softness to his gaze that made me feel like I was in the right place, even though I wasn't sure I was ready to hear what he had to say. "I know this isn't easy," John began, his voice low, "but I've been watching your father for a while now. He's buried in debt, Emily. Gambling, bad investments, and a whole string of failed business ventures. Everything he told you was a lie. And the worst part? He's going to drag you down with him if you don't act fast." I leaned back in my chair, feeling my chest tighten. This was the moment of truth. I had to decide whether to trust this man, someone I didn't even know, or go back to pretending that everything would be fine. But the reality was clear now, nothing was fine. My dad's lies had caught up with him and I had to face it. "Is he going to go to jail?" I asked quietly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. John shook his head slowly. "No, not if he can avoid it. But he's losing everything, his business, his assets, and now your college fund. If you want to protect yourself, you need to make him pay back what he took." I nodded, the weight of it all settling in. "So what do I do?" He slid a piece of paper toward me. "This is a list of his creditors, the ones who are putting the most pressure on him. You should start there. But be careful, Emily. Your dad is good at hiding things. He's probably already planning his next move." I took the paper, my mind racing with the possibilities. The man I thought I knew, the man I thought had always cared for me, was nothing more than a liar and a manipulator. And I was going to have to fight him. Later that evening, after leaving the cafe, I sat down at my desk, the weight of John's words still heavy in my mind. I had a plan now, but it didn't feel like a victory. My heart still ached, the betrayal still stinging like a wound that hadn't fully healed. The next day, I began gathering evidence. I called the bank to get a copy of my account statements, and I reached out to my school's financial office for more information on the scholarships I had received. I needed everything I could find to show that this wasn't just some simple mistake, it was theft. I knew that the next step would be harder. I had to talk to my grandmother and my Aunt Sarah. They had always been my pillars of support, and I couldn't bear to keep this secret from them any longer. I called Aunt Sarah first. "Sarah, I need to talk to you." "It's about Dad," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm listening," she replied, her tone concerned. I told her everything about the money, the lies, and the betrayal. She didn't interrupt, but I could hear the shock in her voice as I spoke. When I finished, she was silent for a long time before finally speaking. "We'll deal with this together, Emily," she said firmly. "You're not alone in this." The next day, my dad sent me a letter. It was short, almost too casual considering the circumstances. I ripped open the envelope and read the words that I could hardly believe. "I'm sorry," the letter began. "I know I've made a terrible mistake. I've taken the money and I want to make it right. I'll pay you back every penny. But I need you to promise me. Don't tell your mom or grandma. This is between us. Please. I don't want to disappoint them anymore." I couldn't believe what I was reading. My father, the man who had always been so sure of himself, was now asking me to keep his secret. It wasn't an apology, it was an attempt to save face, to keep his reputation intact. He wasn't sorry for stealing from me. He was sorry he got caught. I felt a wave of anger wash over me. This wasn't redemption. This wasn't an apology. This was manipulation, plain and simple. He wanted to protect himself, not me. And that was the last straw. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't protect him anymore. I called Aunt Sarah immediately. "He's trying to cover his tracks. He wants me to keep this secret. I said, my voice shaking with frustration. I'll help you take him down, she said, her tone unwavering. We'll get him to pay back every penny. And this time, Emily, he won't get away with it. The weight of the truth was heavy, but now I had a plan. It wasn't going to be easy and it wasn't going to be quick. But I was done being the victim. I was going to make sure my father paid for what he had done. For once, the power was in my hands. I couldn't stop thinking about the letter my father had sent. His words lingered in my mind, twisting around like a knot that I couldn't untangle. He wanted me to keep it a secret to protect him. But I knew that I couldn't. Not anymore. I had to find out the full truth, no matter how painful it was. After talking to Aunt Sarah, I spent the next few days digging into every piece of information I could find. The bank records, the scholarship documents, the records of my savings, all of it had to tell a story of betrayal and lies. But something was still missing, something I couldn't put my finger on. That's when I found it. It was buried in an old drawer in my grandmother's study, among papers and books that hadn't been touched in years. A small leather-bound notebook. I opened it, and as I flipped through the pages, I came across something that made my stomach drop. Notes about my father's debts. The handwriting was unmistakable, my grandmother's. It was a record of loans, overdue payments, and promises that had been broken. But the most shocking part? There, written in neat ink, was a note about how she had paid off some of my father's debts in the past. She had helped him when no one else would, even though she knew how reckless he was. And she never told me. She had kept it from me all these years, and now I couldn't understand why. Did she know who my father truly was? Had she known all along? I sat there for what felt like hours staring at the notebook. I felt a mix of anger and confusion. Why hadn't she told me? Did she think I couldn't handle the truth? Or was it because she still believed he could change? Whatever the reason, the betrayal I felt wasn't just from my father. It was from everyone I had trusted. But the real twist came when I picked up my phone later that day. The unknown number flashed across the screen again. My heart skipped a beat. It was John Mitchell, the man who had given me the first glimpse into my father's world. I hesitated for a moment, but then I answered. Emily. John's voice was calm. But there was something in it that made me feel uneasy. I have more information. About your dad's debts. I felt a lump form in my throat. What do you mean? What else could there be? Your father has been using your name, Emily, he said, his tone serious. Not just for his gambling debts. He's taken out loans under your name, signed contracts, made deals he couldn't pay back. All while you thought you were safe, thinking you were in control. I stared at my phone, shocked. What do you mean? How is that even possible? I've never signed anything for him. You wouldn't have known, John explained. He used your personal information to get credit, to take out loans in your name. He's been hiding it from you for years. But now it's all catching up with him. And you're going to be dragged into it unless you act quickly. I felt the weight of his words settle into my chest. My father had been using me as a shield, hiding behind my name and my trust. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, disbelief, betrayal. All of it mixed together in a storm of emotions. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice shaking. I need your help, John replied, his voice quiet but insistent. Your father has made deals with dangerous people, Emily. People who won't stop until they get what they're owed. I can help you, but you have to help me first. If we can get him to face what he's done, we can stop him before it's too late. I leaned back in my chair, processing everything he was saying. I had to make a choice. A choice between saving my father or saving myself. Between protecting him from the consequences of his actions or standing up for what was right. But how could I protect someone who had used me so mercilessly? I'll help, I said finally, my voice firm. But I want everything. I want to know the full truth. No more lies. Good, John said. Meet me tomorrow. We'll talk strategy. I ended the call and sat there for a long time, the reality of my situation sinking in. My father's lies, his manipulation. It was all starting to make sense. He had used me just like he had used everyone else in his life. But I wasn't going to let him do it anymore. I had to act. I had to fight. For my future, and for the future of everyone he had hurt. And if I had to take him down to do it, then so be it. The weight of everything I had learned about my father's actions began to feel unbearable. But there was no turning back now. I had to act. I couldn't let him get away with this. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for my grandmother, Martha. She was always the one who helped me make sense of the chaos in my life, and I needed her guidance now more than ever. When she picked up, I didn't waste any time. I told her everything about the stolen college fund, the loans in my name, and how my father had manipulated me for years. She listened quietly, her silence an anchor as I poured out my frustration and confusion. Finally, when I finished, she sighed deeply. "You've been through so much, my dear. I'm sorry he did this to you." Her voice was soft but firm. "We will handle this. You're not alone, Emily." I could feel the strength in her words, and it gave me a sense of relief I hadn't known I needed. "I'm going to call Sarah," she continued. "We'll figure out what to do next." It didn't take long for Sarah Matthews, my Aunt Sarah, and a lawyer to get involved. As soon as she understood the extent of my father's betrayal, she sprang into action, already laying out the legal groundwork for the case. "We're going after him, Emily," she said. "We'll make sure he pays back everything he owes you, and we won't stop until he's held accountable." In the following days, our plan started taking shape. My grandmother and Aunt Sarah were my pillars of support. They weren't just standing by me, they were ready to fight with me. The thought of having them by my side filled me with determination. We were going to take this to court, and my father wasn't going to get away with this. We spent countless hours gathering more evidence, compiling bank records, statements, and the list of creditors my father owed. Sarah helped me prepare everything I needed to present a solid case, and for the first time since all of this began, I felt like I was gaining control. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about standing up for myself and showing my father that his manipulation had no power over me. But just as I was starting to feel like we were moving in the right direction, the next twist came. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing some documents, when my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, but something in the back of my mind told me to answer. Picked up. "Hello, Emily?" The voice on the other end was calm but urgent. "This is Daniel Foster. I'm calling from the law office of Foster and Johnson. I'm representing your father." I felt my stomach tighten. "What's this about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm afraid we have a problem," Daniel said. "It appears that your father has signed several financial contracts on your behalf, without your knowledge, of course. We have records showing that he used your name to take out loans and enter into agreements that you now find yourself legally tied to. The documents have your signature, and because of this, we are now dealing with a much larger case." I was stunned into silence. My mind raced as I tried to process his words. "What do you mean he signed contracts with my name? I never signed anything." "I'm afraid the evidence is clear," Daniel continued. "We're looking at a situation that goes beyond your father's gambling debts. You could be held liable for these debts unless we take immediate action. I suggest you get in touch with your lawyer as soon as possible. You'll need to defend yourself in a court of law." I could feel the ground slipping beneath me. It wasn't just the stolen money anymore. It was everything: my name, my credit, my future. My father had dragged me into a web of legal and financial troubles that I never saw coming. "I don't understand," I said, my voice shaky. "How could he do this? How could he sign things in my name without me knowing?" "He's been using your personal information for years, Emily," Daniel said, his voice steady but laced with the weight of the situation. "And now, unfortunately, you're tied into this mess. But you have options. We can fight this, but you need to act quickly." I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. Everything felt like it was closing in on me. My father had used me to prop up his failing finances, and now I was caught in a legal battle that I never asked for. The anger I felt toward him burned like fire in my chest, but there was no time to dwell on it. I had to move forward. I had to fight. I immediately called Aunt Sarah. "He's done more than just steal the money, Sarah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "He's signed things in my name. We need to prepare for a much bigger battle. This is a nightmare." "I know, sweetheart," she replied, her tone fierce and protective. "We're not backing down. We'll get through this, and we'll get your father to answer for everything." The days following the revelation about my father's signed contracts were a whirlwind of legal talk, meetings with lawyers, and preparation for court. I felt like I was living in a fog, constantly juggling paperwork, legal jargon, and emotions I didn't know how to process. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about recovering money anymore. It was about holding my father accountable for everything he had done, everything he had taken from me and the rest of our family. Aunt Sarah worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, reaching out to experts, and filing the necessary paperwork to move forward with the case. My grandmother, Martha, was my rock. She never once hesitated, offering advice, emotional support, and even stepping in to help me organize everything I needed. She knew the importance of standing up for what was right, no matter how hard the fight was. But as much as they tried to shield me from the worst of it, the strain on our family was undeniable. We had always been a close-knit group, bound by years of shared experiences and mutual support. But now the cracks were starting to show. I could feel the tension building with every passing day. It wasn't just the mounting legal pressures. It was the resentment, the hurt, the questions that had been left unanswered for so long. My dad's actions were tearing at the fabric of our family, and it wasn't just me who was affected. It was everyone. One evening, I sat in my grandmother's living room, surrounded by the people who had always supported me. Aunt Sarah was reviewing the latest legal documents, while my grandmother sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her mind clearly elsewhere. I felt like I was waiting for something, some kind of breakthrough, but the silence hung thick in the air. Finally, Aunt Sarah broke the silence. "Emily, I've been thinking about this case," she said, her voice firm but full of concern. "We need to prepare for the worst. Your father isn't going to go down without a fight. He'll try to manipulate the situation and play the victim. You know how he is." I nodded, my stomach twisting in knots. I knew exactly how he operated. He had spent years spinning his own version of the truth, twisting facts to suit his narrative. I had watched him do it with my mother, my grandmother, and even with me. I could already hear his voice in my head, trying to downplay everything, telling me it was all just a misunderstanding, that he was doing the best he could. "He's going to deny everything," I said, my voice thick with anger. "He'll try to make it seem like I'm overreacting, like I'm the one who misunderstood everything." Aunt Sarah sighed, pushing her glasses up her nose. "That's exactly why we need to make sure we have everything documented. If we don't have the evidence to back up what we're saying, he'll manipulate the court, just like he manipulated you. We can't afford to let that happen." I felt a surge of determination. I couldn't let my father get away with this. Not anymore. The man I had once trusted, the man who was supposed to be my protector, had been nothing but a liar and a thief. It was time to put an end to it. That's when the phone rang. I glanced at the screen. My father's name flashed across it, and my heart sank. I had been avoiding his calls for days, but this time I couldn't ignore it. I picked up the phone, my hands shaking. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emily, listen." My father's voice came through, trying to sound calm, but I could hear the desperation in it. "I know things have gotten out of hand, but we need to talk. I'm sorry for what happened, okay? But you need to understand. I didn't do this to hurt you." I closed my eyes, my mind racing. "You didn't do this to hurt me?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You've been stealing from me for months, lying to me, signing my name on loans without my permission, and you think I'm just going to forgive you?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I know I messed up," he said, his voice barely audible. "But I'm your father, Emily. You owe me some understanding here." I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. "No. I don't owe you anything. You've been using me, manipulating me, and now you want me to just pretend like none of this matters? You've destroyed everything, Dad." I could hear his breathing on the other end of the phone, like he was trying to find the right words. "I'm sorry, Emily," he said finally, his voice breaking, "but I'm not going to lose you over this. I'll make it right, I swear." But it was too late. His words felt empty now. They didn't mean anything anymore. I hung up the phone without saying another word. "Are you okay?" Aunt Sarah asked, looking at me with concern. "No," replied quietly. "But I will be. We're doing this. We're taking him down." The legal battle was far from easy. Every day felt like a mountain I was climbing, and with each new document, each new piece of evidence, I felt the weight of the world pushing me further down. The pressure from my father's lawyers was relentless, his manipulative tactics becoming more sophisticated. He wasn't just fighting to get out of this mess. He was trying to make me look like the bad guy. Every attempt to twist the facts made my blood boil, but I kept pushing forward. I couldn't afford to let him win. The days turned into weeks, and with every hearing, every legal meeting, I found myself growing more exhausted. The emotional toll was immense. Every time I sat in front of the lawyer, every time I went over the evidence again, the anger, the hurt would rise up inside me. But I couldn't give in. My father had taken so much from me already. I couldn't let him take my future too. As the legal process dragged on, I found it harder and harder to balance everything. My final year of college should have been a time to focus on my studies, to finish what I had worked so hard for. But instead I was spending hours at the courthouse and with my lawyer, trying to piece together my father's lies. My grades began to slip. The stress of it all was overwhelming. One evening, sitting alone in my apartment, I finally broke down. The weight of it all was crushing. I couldn't keep pretending like I had everything under control. I thought about giving up, about walking away from it all. I was so close to losing everything, my education, my sanity, my family's trust. It felt like the world was closing in around me. But then I remembered something my grandmother had said to me earlier, in one of our many late-night talks. "You are stronger than you think, Emily. You've already come so far. Don't let him win. Keep pushing no matter how hard it gets." I wiped away my tears and stood up, determined not to let my father's actions destroy me. I wasn't going to let him have that power. I had fought for everything I had, and I wasn't going to let him take it away. That's when I received a call from my friend Emma. She had been my rock throughout this whole ordeal. "Hey Em," she said, her voice full of warmth. "I found something for you." "What do you mean?" I asked, a little confused. "I've been talking to a few people," she explained. "There's a job opening at a local cafe. It's part-time and I think you'd be perfect for it. It's flexible enough to fit around your school schedule, and you could use the extra cash. Plus, you'd get to take your mind off things for a while." The thought of a part-time job, something that would allow me to regain some sense of normalcy, felt like a lifeline. I hadn't realized how much I had been drowning in the pressure of it all. The idea of stepping away from the constant legal battle, even for just a few hours a week, felt like a breath of fresh air. "I'll take it," I said, a smile finally breaking through the exhaustion in my voice. "Thanks, Emma. You have no idea how much this means to me." I started the job the following week. It wasn't much, just serving coffee and pastries at a small cafe, but it gave me a sense of control again. For a few hours each day, I could forget about the court hearings and the lies my father had spread. I could just focus on something simple, something that had nothing to do with my past. And slowly things started to get better. With my family's support, I was able to stay on top of my legal case. My grades began to improve as I managed to find more balance between school and work. The cafe job, though exhausting at times, gave me the energy to keep going. I was learning how to live in the moment again, how to fight for what I wanted without letting the past drag me down. It was still hard. There were days when I felt like I was losing the fight, like everything was slipping through my fingers. But with each passing day, I found a little more strength. I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. I wasn't going to let my father's mistakes define me. I was going to make it through this. And when I did, I would come out stronger than I had ever been. Months had passed since the battle began. Months that were filled with sleepless nights, endless meetings, and mounting frustration. But with each passing day, my resolve grew stronger. I couldn't afford to back down, not when everything I had worked for was on the line. My family and I had been through so much, and I refused to let my father's actions define me any longer. The legal process had been long and grueling. Every time we thought we were close to a resolution, my father's lawyers would find a way to stall, to twist the facts, to make us question whether this fight was even worth it. But we kept pushing forward. Aunt Sarah was relentless. My grandmother, though tired, never wavered in her support. They were the backbone of this entire ordeal. And then finally the breakthrough came. My father's lawyer called. It was a day I had anticipated but never quite expected to come. He informed us that my father was finally ready to settle. The money he had stolen from me would be returned. I could hardly believe it. After all the fighting, all the emotional and mental toll it had taken on me, it was over. Or so I thought. The next day, I stood in the lawyer's office, staring down at the settlement papers. My father's signature was at the bottom, along with the amount that had been stolen, plus interest. A part of me wanted to feel victorious, to feel that sweet rush of having won. But as I looked at the figure on the page, I realized something. This wasn't the victory I had imagined. My father's actions had been forced, not chosen. He wasn't paying me back out of a sense of remorse or guilt. He was doing it because he had no other choice. The legal system had backed him into a corner, and now, he was merely doing the bare minimum to avoid further consequences. As I sat there, the weight of it all hit me. My father hadn't changed. He hadn't learned anything. He had simply been caught. The money was returned, but my trust, my relationship with him would never be the same. This wasn't redemption, it was survival. And I wasn't sure I wanted to be a part of his survival anymore. The thought was bitter. For years, I had clung to the hope that my father would change, that he would one day be the man I needed him to be. But I had learned the hard way that some people never change. They only change when they have to, when there's no other option left. And I wasn't going to keep hoping for something that would never come. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, court filings, and settling legal fees. But through it all, I felt a shift within myself. This fight, this whole process had been about more than just the money. It had been about reclaiming my life, my future, and my sense of self. And then came the day I had been waiting for, the day of my graduation. As I walked across the stage, the weight of everything I had been through settled into my bones. The diploma I received wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a symbol of everything I had fought for. It was a symbol of resilience, of strength, of independence. I wasn't the same person I had been when I started this journey. I was stronger, wiser, and more capable than I had ever imagined. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. I wasn't held back by my father's lies, his manipulations, or the guilt he had tried to impose on me. I had built a future for myself, one that was completely mine. And for the first time, I knew who I was. Someone who could stand on her own, without relying on anyone else. As the ceremony ended, I found myself standing outside, the evening sun casting a warm glow over the campus. I took a deep breath, knowing that this was only the beginning. I wasn't just moving forward with my career in London. I was moving forward with my life. I had learned that independence wasn't just about financial freedom. It was about emotional freedom too. And I had finally broken free from the chains my father had tried to bind me with. I didn't need him. I didn't need anyone else to define me. I had everything I needed within myself. And that was enough. It's funny how one day you can feel like the whole world is against you. And the next, you realize you're standing stronger than ever. The court case was over. The settlement had been made. The money was returned. But the fight wasn't just about the money, it had never been. It had been about something deeper. It had been about reclaiming my power, my sense of self-worth, and ultimately my freedom. My father's attempts to manipulate me, to control my decisions, to guilt me into taking his side, had all failed. Every time he tried to twist the situation to make me doubt myself, I pushed back. I fought, not just for the money he had stolen, but for my future. And in the end, that was the victory I needed. I sat in my small apartment in London, the city that had become a symbol of my independence. The place was a bit messy, papers scattered on the desk, a coffee cup from this morning still sitting on the table. But for the first time, it didn't bother me. Felt like home. It felt like my space, the space I had built for myself from scratch. I thought back to the days when I thought I could never get here. When I thought I would always be tethered to my father's mistakes, always living in the shadow of his lies. But now, I realized that the man I once tried so hard to make proud was never going to be the source of my happiness. He had never understood that my dreams didn't depend on him. They never did. The truth was, this victory wasn't just a legal one. It was a personal one. I had fought for my future, my independence, and most importantly, for my peace of mind. The emotional scars from my father's manipulation and betrayal would take time to heal, but I had come a long way. I had learned to trust myself again. I had learned that no matter what my father, or anyone else thought, I was worthy of a future that was entirely mine. I received a message from Aunt Sarah that evening. She had been by my side through every step of this journey, and I knew she would always be there, guiding me forward. The message was simple, but it meant the world to me. I'm proud of you, Emily. You've come so far. Tears welled up in my eyes as I read it. It wasn't just the message itself. but the realization that I had finally come to a place where I could stand on my own, without the weight of my past holding me back. I had learned that I didn't need anyone's approval to be worthy. I didn't need anyone's validation to know my value. And so I moved forward not just into a new job, but into a new chapter of my life. I was free. Free from the lies, the manipulation, and the uncertainty. I was free to live my life on my own terms, to create the future I had always dreamed of, and to never again let anyone dictate my worth. As I walked down the busy streets of London, the city that had become my home, I realized something. This was only the beginning. The world was open to me now. It was a future that I could shape, a future that was no longer tied to my father's mistakes. With every step I took, I felt a little lighter, a little stronger. I had taken control of my life, and no one, not even my father, could take that away from me.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for updates on new videos. See you next time.